Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Bolt Action Reloading. In this week's episode, we're going to see if we can find the best performing primer for our 30-06 load with Varget. Stick around. Welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here and you'd like to see how I and the rest of you here make our group smaller, start now by subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell icon. That way you get notified when I post next week's video and you won't miss anything. Guys, if you're fans of the channel, you know we've been doing a little bit of primer testing lately, and today's test will be no different. In today's test, we're trying to do some quick testing to determine what primer is going to give us the most consistent performance with Hodgdon Varget in 30-06. I haven't reloaded a ton of Varget, and I really haven't tried many different primers with it, so in today's test, we're hoping to expand our horizons a little bit and see if any particular primer that we have gives us more consistent ignition and performance. Some of the data in today's video you might have seen before, but we're certainly adding to it today, trying to figure out what primer we should be doing our main load development with Varget. When we did our initial load workup of the BR2 and we were fireforming our brass, I thought we would just load up the exact same load with two other primers, and then we would compare the performance, again doing fireforming. This should be even across the board. Ordinarily we'd like to do this on fireformed brass. Let's just get right into our testing. The test platform that we're testing with today is the Tikka M695, chambered in 30-06. This rifle has a 22.5-inch barrel, and all of the estimates for velocity are going to be based on that 22.5-inch barrel length. The brass we're using for today's testing is all Nosler brass. It's its initial firings, so like I alluded to earlier, we are going to be fireforming during today's test. Not necessarily ideal, but I still think we're going to be able to look to find out which primer gives us the most consistent ignition and most consistent performance, as well as see if any of these pressure signs look different on any of the primers. So getting right into our test load for today, our projectile is the Spear 150 grain gold dot. Part number is 308150 GDB. The brass is Nosler brass, brand new, fireforming during this testing. The powder we're using for today is Hodgdon's Varget. This is an extreme powder that should give us some temperature consistency, and that's one of the reasons why we picked it to start our load development with. The max load that Quick Load was predicting for us was actually 56.2 grains. We tend to call this Scott Satterley testing, but we usually go one step above that, so we're actually going to have our max load being at 56.5 grains. We're going to be backing down in 0.3 grain increments in 10 rounds for each of these powders. And so we're going to actually be starting our load at 53.8 grains all the way to 56.5 grains in 0.3 grain increments. Quick Load is estimating our starting velocity to be 2852 feet per second, maxing out at 2976 feet per second. The primers that we're using today, if you guys are a fan of the channel, you've already seen the BR2 data. In addition to the CCI BR2, we're also going to be shooting the Fed 210M as well as the Fed 215M. The 210 is the standard, and the 215 is the Magnum primer. With powders like H4350, which is also an Extreme Series powder, I've had better luck with the 215s than the 210s, but we're not going to know until we test. Today's testing may not give us a definitive answer, but it's hopefully going to at least show us if something doesn't work well, and we know to eliminate it right off the bat before we've loaded more of that combination. So our cartridge overall length that we're loading to is 3.30 inches. The cartridge base to ogive is 2.718 inches. Essentially, this is about exactly 30 thousandths off of our lands. So groups aren't really what we're shooting for today. I'm still trying to figure out a more consistent platform to make sure that I'm not inducing any error in the groups. The BR2, like I said, was basically right at 2 MOA. The 215 was the same test platform, identical. 2.916 MOA is what it shot. I ended up removing the front bipod, going with a different front rest, and the group size dropped to 1.592 MOA for 10 shots. Again, the actual group size is not what we were looking for today, near as much as it was our velocity curves. So let's get right into our velocity curves. The one we've seen before with the BR2, we started out at 2847 feet per second, going all the way to 3036 feet per second. Keep in mind, Quick Load was only estimating we were going to hit 2976 feet per second, and we've exceeded that with all primers that we're going to test today. A couple reasonable plateaus in there, talking about our barrel time that we're looking at trying to hit, which is going to be real close to max load. Essentially at 2967 feet per second is where we're going to be hitting our barrel node. At least with the BR2, it looked like we were talking about somewhere around 55.3 grains to 55.6 was where we might load. But no real defined plateau in there. But certainly if we're going to start shooting some groups, that would be where we would start. Moving on to the 210M. 210M, we started off at 2879 feet per second. had some interesting performance with this. Around 55.3 grains, it actually had a fairly reasonable node, right around 3,000 feet per second. But we didn't max out our velocity until our max charge. We're basically right at 3,070 feet per second. Our 215, we're starting out 2,876 feet per second. Also seem to have a couple plateaus in there. Basically at 54.4 grains, we're right around 2,950 feet per second. Creeping up to the next node around 55.6, we're right around 3,015 feet per second. And our velocity maxed out today right around that same, almost identical to the 210, and that 3070 feet per second number. Just to make it a little bit easier, we'll actually put all three of them on the same graph so we can look at them all together and see which primer we want to pick to test first. Doesn't mean we're going to end up with it, but we want to give ourselves the best chance to succeed right out of the gate. Unfortunately, finding a velocity that's exactly 2,967 feet per second doesn't seem like it's going to happen today. Both the 215 and 210 have that velocity at 2,959, right around 54.7 grains, but not really a super nice plateau right there. But it might be worth testing somewhere around 54.4 grains just to see what kind of SD and groups that we could get. As far as consistent ignition and performance, it almost appears that the BR2 will be our winner again today, seeing as we really didn't have any of those negative velocity spikes except for right around 55.9 grains. We did drop 10 feet per second as we went up at 0.3 of a grain in charge. Multiple factors could be involved in that, but it certainly had the most even response graph, at least with my eye. But I'm always interested to hear what you guys have to say in the comment section below. According to Quick Load, as soon as we got over 2,967 feet per second, we were over pressure for this case. I will put a chart on the screen that has the estimated velocities and pressures, as well as the barrel times if you guys are interested in taking a look. We know Quick Load thinks we're getting over pressure here. Let's take a look at our brass and see if we see any pressure signs that make us nervous. We can see a little bit of extra primer flattening as we get towards that higher charge, but certainly nothing that's making me nervous in any case. But certainly our goal is not to try and wear this brass out or this rifle by any means. Finding some accuracy at a reasonable pressure is what we're looking for, and it would certainly be nice not to be pushing this brass as hard as we possibly can, because we'd like it to last a little while. But anyway, overall, it looks like any one of these primers might actually give us some reasonable results. We won't know until we get to our next phase of testing, but looks like the BR2 might be our best opportunity to succeed. Otherwise, honestly, the 215M might be my choice. Certainly one of the reasons behind that is this is a hunting rifle. I've always felt a little bit more comfortable using a Magnum primer in a situation where we might be shooting in the cold and we really want to make sure that we're going to have that consistent ignition. Probably any of these primers would work just fine. If one looks just as good as the other, might just as well pick the hotter primer if it looks like that's going to give us just as good of performance. But anyway, even if you're not looking for a primer for 30-06, I hope you found today's video interesting. If you have any comments or questions about the video, make sure you post those in the comment section below. If you like the content that we do here, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon so you get notified when I post next week's video. I hope to see you guys back next week. And until then, stay safe in small groups.